Welcome everybody to the annual wrap-up of the Estonian startup tech ecosystem, basically overview of the year. We can really say it's annual now. It's already the third year in a row, so hope you've also followed us during the past 2 years. So first of all, to kick off the evening, of course, let me introduce you to our fine panelists. So starting from there, Kaidi Ruusalepp, President of the Estonian Founders Association. Next to her, Joonas Vänto, Head of Invest Estonia. Hello. Lauri Antalainen, here representing Estonian Business Angels Network, also wearing many other hats, of course. And next to me, Margus Uudam, also a man of many hats, but here, chairman of the Estonian two hats, Venture Capital Association. So, glad to see so many people here. We all know how difficult it was to get out of our homes with the snow. The topic of today's wrap-up is how can crises fertilize the tech sector? So as we all know, difficult times are the best fertilizer for future opportunities. So we can kind of dig a bit deeper into what has happened during the past year, maybe remembering our hopes and wishes exactly 1 year ago, and take a look at how things went, like the expectation versus reality episode. Then see how the numbers are doing in Estonia and in Europe in general. And then we will kind of take a look at 3 aspects of how we can fertilize the future, taking more a look at the VC funding, taking a look at talent, and also talking about community and the ecosystem in general. Where are we and what are the opportunities? And also then taking a look into the coming 5 years. Are we good? Are we afraid? What can be really the future fertilizer? And of course, I hope we have time for also some questions. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask our panelists, keep your questions in your mind and let me know after we finish. So, first question. How has 2022 turned out? What did you expect this year would bring, and what was different? And maybe mention a few milestones or key events or things from your organization that took place. Maybe let's start with, everybody will answer that. So.
Hi, good evening, and pleasure to represent the Estonian Founders Society on the stage today, and we actually have the first slide to describe what happened this year. So we have the year kicked off with a new unicorn, Veriff, but I already saw 6 people in the audience. This is the, Märt is there. We have the close to new unicorn, so we have 1 exit to unicorn, and so I would actually ask this audience to give a huge applause to Sixfold team and the achievements. Hope you will be later here so that people can ask all the questions. So congrats. And in between Veriff and Sixfold, obviously for the founders and for this tech community, what happens is the war next door and the crisis in the markets, the crisis in the talent and all of it. So. That maybe is the most controversial year for all Estonian tech founders. And I had a dinner last week with well-known Estonian founders, and we were looking back the year of 2022, and we had 2 groups. And there was no gray zone in between. The group 1 said, the most horrible year ever. The most difficult, toughest year ever. And the second group, the best ever year. And that, I think, is when you look back at 2022, for some it was the best ever year, and for some it was the worst year. But we are talking about the fertilizer and what we can learn from it. At the end of the year, everybody said that it was crucial because it made them stronger and it made them think what introduces to growth and revenue in 2023.
Thank you. What about Joonas and Invest Estonia?
Thank you, and then good evening from my side to everyone as well. Well, it was definitely a roller coaster year. I think setting up the goals for this year was definitely that we didn't see coming, which happened in the first half of this year, and it was really intense, still is. Not a good year for definitely Ukraine and then the catastrophic things happening there. But from our organization side, I think the first half went in maybe a little bit in a not in a panic way, but still there was quite a lot of fears there as well, like what will happen in the economy. And now we see what's rolling out because of the war and because of the energy crisis as well. But on the other side, on the positive side, the next year when actually the coping was already there in the business side and the economic side. Our organization's work really kicked off as well, and then all of the events, all of the strategic plans we needed to go over went in a high gear, and then the other side of the year was definitely really intense in that way. But there was always like the trend was like, are those projects which were interested in towards Estonia, towards bringing that FDI to Estonia, and putting the projects to hold. Those question marks were definitely there, but as we can already almost wrap up this year, we see that after the answers from the Estonian side, from our team side to the investors, investors, then we can proudly say that we're 140% of our KPIs set last year. So definitely that way a good year for us as well. And if we just for a second forget the horrible things going on in Ukraine, and then which really have an effect for the economy as well, then the interest towards Estonia is really, really high. And then we have a lot of clients who still look a lot of opportunities in Estonia. And then there was a good example during Slush where the really big VC fund came to our side event as well, and then said that we have never invested into Estonia before, but I think now is the time. So I think that really paints a picture of the situation right now as well. There are still investors looking ahead and then doing the work, finding opportunities in Estonia as well.
Thank you. Anything dramatic as in expectation versus reality in the business angel side?
Yes, thank you. Hello from my part. I'm Vice President of EstBAN, representing EstBAN, and also all the other business angels perhaps in Estonia that are not necessarily yet members of EstBAN. Your question was how did the year turn out compared to what we anticipated last year? So I would say that it turned out better, and it turned out much better when we take into account what happened at the end of February, the war starting. In fact, at the end of last year, we anticipated that the investments in startups would fall off quite a bit, and whereas it did happen to some extent, and then obviously in March it was really difficult for a startup to raise funding. After that, it actually got better, and it got much better than we anticipated. So, for example, just to give you some idea, in EstBAN we have these syndicates that we run. For example, we run syndicate in Latitude event, in Startup Day, and other events. So this year we made a new record. We made in total 5 syndicates through EstBAN. These syndicates were oversubscribed, so some of the investors had to put less money in that they initially wanted. We did have, well, there were some other syndicates that were not led by EstBAN, for example, Ajujaht, they also made the biggest syndicate they have made so far. So I would say that it was still possible for startups to raise money, so for that matter, the year went pretty well.
Thank you. We can talk later about then the next year, and if this year was still kind of a lagging from 2021, or what can we expect next? But we will get there definitely. And getting to Margus, I remember last year you were also kind of a bit pessimistic about 2022. How would you comment on that?
Yes. So last year, at this very similar event, I made a forecast that 2022 Estonian startups will raise less than 1 billion, and in January I was already wrong. So maybe next question. but I would say the reality that we saw from 2018 to 22 was very tough for us at Karma Ventures. We saw that the market is kind of off, and we struggled to do some deals where valuations were really high, and we tried to look the substance. Deals happened, so we missed some, and definitely happy to be wrong again next year. I think the new reality is forming now, and maybe there are some illustrations later as well on how to look at it.
Okay, so now that we've talked in general, let's take a look at where we really are. This mostly is the statistics as of 9 months of this year. As we can see, then 1,450 startups in the database, which means on the slide there you can see the other European countries with the longest bar, by the way, if you didn't yet read this country name under there. So we keep our place as the most entrepreneurial country in Europe still, which already happened last year. Let's take a look at if this is just a lot of startups doing nothing. No, it's not the case. We're really maturing. We can see that the startups are really paying a lot of employment taxes in growing scale, and also the turnover, which means it's not just empty shells having fun with investors' money. If we take a look at Europe, then the longest bar there is also Estonia, and the second longest is Iceland. So these two countries are punching above their weight in terms of ability to raise funding. So these 3 bars show general funding in Europe. This was taken from the latest Tomico report. So the general small decrease in Europe, of course, is something we will get to and touch upon. It's not a huge one, because if we take a look at all the previous years, then coming down from 100 billion to 85 is not a catastrophe, because 2021 was probably an outliner, and really exceptionally high numbers where we're still good. But now getting to the Estonian on this slide, we are still on the increase compared to 21 as well. So we can kind of talk about how or why, like when the rest of the world and Europe are showing a bit of signs of cooling down, why are the tech sector numbers in Estonia still growing? And maybe we can get a little bit different perspectives. For starting maybe with Kaidi, from the entrepreneurial perspective. Like why do you think this is?
Well, first of all, I hope that during the event, Margus will make a prediction for the next year so that we can all prove him wrong in January. And
thanks to you, Margus, basically.
Yes, and the second, what I really hope is that Bolt and Veriff will raise next year. then we can also have the numbers right, because this is what happened this year, and you get 2 unicorns raising the funds, and you immediately raise it above 1 million. So if we look why Estonian startups are doing well, so first of all, and when we look at the numbers, we've been growing in number of unicorns. We consider 10 companies to be Estonian unicorns, which was -1 last year, and we hope next year we'll introduce more unicorns, meaning we have larger companies, we have larger fundraising, we have larger revenue generating companies, larger employers, and that's how the sector is growing. So hoping next year more new unicorns will also do be introduced. The second reason for Estonia to do well is if you think about our DNA. And funnily enough, I was helping, and now we're going back to a bit this kind of literature and history. I helped my son to do the homework about Kalevipoeg, the EIPOS Kalevipoeg. And the country where we live in and this nation, our DNA is resilience. And if you think about the tech sector and the startup and startuppers, they are resilient. And this year also has been showing that not only companies doing good, not only they introduce 1.5 billion in revenue, but the sector is growing, the sector is raising funds, and the numbers are growing. And the third, which has been widely spoken in this society and in Estonia, we don't have a home market. So whatever we do globally, and we spread our markets. And we are not one market country, we are not 2 or 3 markets country. We are many markets country, and we are also across the region. So it's not only Europe, it's the Asia, it's the US. And the founders know how to play the cards. So you see what is happening in the UK, you see what is happening in the US and Asia, and then you play around, okay, this is the country we need to focus, this is the segment we need to make it stronger. So it's the growth of the unicorns, it's the resilience, and it's actually the smartness of doing business globally.
Yeah. Maybe, Lauri, if you can comment on from the early capital side, and also you have different views maybe from digitalization and other
Yes,
aspects.
so I totally agree with what Kaidi just said, but I'd like to bring another point of view here. If you look at the graphs, such as this one that we have on the screen right now, then usually this kind of how much revenue to the startups sector makes, or how much money they raise. If you look at those graphs, then usually 80% of this money is made by one company. And from the rest, 80% is made by another one, and so on and so forth. But it's important to understand that success takes time. So for the companies to get to the point where they can make 80% of this graph, they have to be founded like at least 5, maybe 10 years beforehand. What I'm really kind of positive about or optimistic about is that as I see that the startup investments in the angel scene are still happening and in a pretty good ratio, then the long tail for us looks pretty good. So we need to take this into account, that it takes time, and so I'm optimistic in that sense.
So these graphs will keep on going up and up and up?
Sure, there will be certainly fluctuations, because there might be cases where there will be 1 year when the first 80% company will not be there, but then again, they will be there the next year. So I'm pretty certain that in the long term it will grow. Yes.
And yeah, maybe some more comments on.
I so like numbers which are measured per capita. So
our favorite.
EstVCA had US trip, and somehow at one point of time we found ourselves at Dallas Cowboys huge arena. But we thought Saku Suurhall is bigger per capita. so, but of course it is kind of a measure, and but more than quantity, I'd like to understand the quality. And you could measure like how many startups which are registered in deal room, whatsoever, have raised seed round, for example, and so on. But on these numbers, I think the most interesting is, if it would be possible to measure, is the deployment efficiency of the capital. Because you can raise huge amounts and, just burn it. So, and on that criteria, I think Estonia is doing incredibly well, my subjective feeling, that we deploy very efficiently, and on that graph, compared to other countries, we might be like in much better place even.
Thank you. Now we can take a look maybe more to the funding side and availability of capital. We've all heard and seen written and talks about the VC market and investment scene globally is in shaky times, and 400 billion euros of valuation was just kind of erased during last year. So how are this crisis affecting the capital availability in general? Maybe just to put on the table two opposing views, so you can, I hope, argue between each other. Is there a lot of dry powder looking to be deployed? Or are the hard times really here, and it's difficult for startups to raise funds, because you can hear both sides being expressed. So maybe Margus, I can give you this thing.
Next slide.
To next slide. You had prepared some slides. I don't know if this is the appropriate time.
Yeah. Okay. 2023. So take next slides as more like thinking process rather than truth. But I zoomed out Nasdaq, and apparently I found that in the beginning or early part of it, 1975, I was born. And the early part of it is kind of flat and boring. Now, you might see something which we call like huge crisis. This one here, if you notice here, we called it a huge crisis. And this is a moment where Sequoia famous presentation, RIP good times. They will never come back. After that, it hasn't been that bad. But and I thought to ask like who of you have been born before 1990s, but when I look at the audience, I maybe skip that question. There's more younger people here, but so how our reality is shaped? What is the reality? And this is where I checked like new generation. For example, I know Marko Olo was born 1991. He came to like starting building career probably 2011 or so. And this is where all the good things started to happen. And all this growth curve is our reality. It's normal. This is how it should be. Now, if I look at the investment landscape, then ambient sound investment started investing in 2006, roughly here. Estonian Development Fund was created here. Now, the first venture funds, Karma Ventures 2016, it was built on that curve. When everything is already quite high up. And this was considered to be the reality, where we grow, how we build our expectations. And obviously, if you look at the unicorns, some of them, when they are established, and then potentially when they got to the unicorn status, that's the normal curve. I did very random like technical analysis. This trend line here on the bottom side, it's more like you can draw yourself what you like. I added some kind of perspective, what's normal expected return from this risk or asset class. And you can try at home, print it out, and try to draw with your hand where it leads next. At least my hand reluctantly didn't want to go up. And maybe because I originally was left-handed, but at the moment, we are in a very awkward place where there is biggest amount of dry powder available. The fundraising in US was highest ever first half of this year. In Baltics, there is almost biggest amount of dry powder available. It is lagging indicator in a sense that most of these funds were agreed end of 2021. They were like KYC, they AML'd, signed in 2022. When I talk to investors, most say, don't raise next year. After that, it will be great again. But I think if I look at like how much the asset classes among large asset managers, the equity part will decrease, it means they will be over-deployed in venture. At somewhat normal times, venture funds deployed one fund for 5 years. Now, investors who invest in funds said, for time being, they came back after every 3 years. Now they are coming back after 1 year. So investing in a new fund. And so LPs who invest in funds, they are soon or already now over-deployed in venture. And at least when I talk to fund managers, it is incredibly hard to raise now. If the market should drop more, it will get even more complicated, which means dry powder will phase out. So my thinking is raise as much as possible as soon as you can.
Good advice.
Like always.
Good advice. So, we can leave this on for now, and I'd like to hear some hopefully opposing views. Or what do you think, Lauri, about this?
Well, first of all, this is like linear graph. I think if you put it into logarithm scale, then it does not look so.
Very linear, but even slower. I added actually some kind of. It's linear, but I added stronger growth. So, but I agree with you.
But in general, I understand Margus's pain. You know, the way it works is that since the Nasdaq Composite has come down. The kind of latest investors in Series C, they are not sure in what valuations it does make sense for them to invest, so that in what valuations then take an IPO, and then we get once they are not doing those valuations, then the Series B does not know what to do. Series A, I think for us like business angels, there's a certain inertia in this process, so we don't see the pain yet. But just to be on the same boat with Margus, maybe next year we will do. Let's see.
So before I ask Kaidi the same question, and also Joonas, do you think that the dry powder is available evenly? I mean, or are there still verticals or sectors in which they are more available? Or is there any maybe laziness also from the VC side, like expecting to have 1 from 10 successful deal at least, or is it getting maybe too comfortable, or how is your view on maybe that?
Good question. I don't see. Of course, I like numbers, but I think every crisis is somehow a new one. And they don't act as the old crisis, and we definitely can't see all of the same things we saw from the last ones. So also when we had the discussion before the event, then I was the like the way over positive person. I tried to what's the word? Like fight back that maybe a little bit naive positive. Still can't fight the way I am. But in every crisis there's an opportunity, and I think that the 400 billion which went off the market as a valuation, I think it's a good thing. The air is more clear now. But the funds are still full of money as well. So if the funds will not make those investments, the alternative like the cost or alternative minus is already written into the equation. So from the positive side, definitely to go with the same marks with Margus, raise quickly, but I think the focus is already a little bit shift. So if we take with compared to sector, if it's, I don't know, green sector or energy tech or anything related to the crisis right now, then I think you're on that side when the grass is really, really green.
All right, thank you. What about Kaidi? Did you agree
from
with?
the founder's point of view, I was a bit, in a way, positive and negative when I came here. But after when Margus said that next year is going to be a horrible year, and after I heard that Sequoia also predicted that trip good times and it never come back, so I sense and I smell a pattern. So I'm more positive after this chat, actually.
Let's fight back.
Yeah. But the good thing is when last week it was a good week because Atomicus report came out, and all look at the Atomic report because today it's very good to talk about it. 50 billion dry powder in Europe. 50 billion venture capital dry powder in Europe. Never had such a high number dry powder before. It has to be invested. Second, the valuations are down. So more capital deployed to more founders. The third is, which is a good thing, especially for us, because we're efficient at using the capital and growing the companies, is VCs finally have time to do the due diligence. It's not about FOMA, and it's not about jumping into the first deal you get. And the FTX, you can use it as an example. If the founder is pitching and playing the computer game same time, and you get those hundreds of millions checks, whereas we here and here in Estonia, when we see due diligence, they talk to employees, they talk to customers, they talk to security in the entry of your office. This is how deep they do the due diligence. And we hope that really the stars, those founders who know what to do with the capital and how to grow the capital, this is what we are going to see next year. And there's one more thing what I haven't seen before. And a month ago, I was in Singapore, and Asian capital, mainly when I lived in Singapore a couple of years ago, Asia was deploying capital to Asian companies. Asia first, looking only Asian region. This was the first time when Asian capital started to talk about diversification and investing in Europe, because now they don't see Indonesia as a different market than China as a different market. They see Asia as one market and Europe as the other market. So there's a lot of interesting and actually smart capital from Asia looking to European and specifically European companies, not the US companies. So that may also boost the growth of Europe and then maybe also European companies looking around the Asia. We haven't seen the numbers yet, and it's not the Chinese capital, because Chinese is becoming more local. It's more capital coming out of the other countries and looking to deploy here.
Yeah, one more comment.
I would definitely would like to back up that last part of the interest from Asia. We see from Invest Estonia side that there are a lot of funds, a lot of big companies which VC branches also are interested in Estonia, and we have quite a lot of visits coming from that side as well, and also the need of setting up those great startups from Estonia is definitely there.
Yeah, Margus.
There is one item that maybe goes unnoticed, but Europe might be in relatively good position. there is something which happened during COVID time. So COVID, which was crisis as well, this is here. After COVID, I think working from home, we felt we are so productive that Nasdaq doubled. But during this COVID time, some of the funds started to fail. The investors behind the fund said, well, hold back, we don't have money. We don't like to take the risk at the moment. And the funds, even they had dry powder on paper, couldn't invest. This will happen definitely 2023, 24 as well. But in Europe, most funds have public sector investors, and quite many have cornerstone investors from public sector. And they can make that employments, and they can make funds running. Maybe another thing where the capital is also heading, nowadays all funds are either climate tech funds or deep tech funds. It's mostly because public sector is saying we invest only in these funds, and suddenly all the funds you meet at investor forums are deep tech funds or climate tech funds. So it is not excluded that with good and strong deployments, there will be nice either right deployments or even some bubbles in very difficult times. So these are trends also to focus on and pay attention to.
Definitely. As to wrap up this part of the conversation, I think there's always two sides to the same coin. So even if we see re-evaluations of companies or having difficulties in raising funds or even for startups to start off, so it can be a good step towards more quality process and quality startups. So thank you for that insight. Now turning a little bit to another really important thing, maybe even a more important thing in building startups, and that is talent. Estonia now is ranking 17th in the World Talent Competitiveness Index, which is 2 places up from last year, which is really a good sign. But we also hear that there's a lot of layoffs globally, which have already reached Estonia a little bit. Looking at the graph, you can see that the number of employees is strong, 10,000 in the sector, and also the proportion of all the job postings that are out there, really a lot, most are to do with tech. This is Estonia and Portugal are the top. So going to the question, are we good with talent? 17th in the competitiveness, a lot of tech positions available, maybe layoffs haven't been so strongly affecting us yet, but on the other hand, we're still missing thousands of skilled people. So where are we now exactly? What kind of people do we need now? We hear also that AI is doing programming by itself now. So what about your perspective, Kaidi?
Let me turn to the audience. How many of you are started up? Oh, okay, I'm going to ask either you're a startup or VC. How many of you hire right now? Raise your hand. All right. Is it around third? Yes. How many of you don't hire right now?
Less.
Less, okay. Is it difficult to find a talent? Raise your hand. No. Sort of. Yeah. The talent situation in Estonia. So first of all, we've reached already last year in the situation where tech sector companies we had to employ talents from each other. So the country was so dry of talent that you simply had to go and see if any other techies is there available from the tech sector. Is it easy to bring talents in from European Union? No problem. The war had a huge hit on the talent, because where Estonia had the engineers coming from and and a lot of tech people. And what also happened this year, but that's not only this year, but that's the work between or from the governments, is Spain introduced the absolutely brilliant startup visa. Portugal is about to introduce the same brilliant talent visa and startup visa. So Estonia, in a way, is losing in the competition. We are also losing in competition of the talents by this kind of messages given by very high leaders of Estonian government saying that we only want some of you and not everybody is welcome to Estonia. So how can you actually invite people and hire people when the messages from the country are a bit controversial? So talent issue is the issue number one for the tech society, for the founders. And this is when we discussed, for example, with Estonian ETL, you're all Estonians, you know, ETL. What are the key messages to the government from the tech sector? A combined key messages. Then Estonian Founders Society said we have only one issue, and this is the talent. This is the lack of talent, the access of talent, and ease of bringing in the talent. And I don't see it's gonna make any, or it's gonna get easier next year. And you were also asking about the layoff. It's not about tech sector. The layoff is the whole across all the world, but I still believe that tech sector next year we're gonna have a shortage of talents and the lack of talents.
Is there anything else? I mean, the visa programs that we have now, we see other countries doing the same. We don't yet know if all the programs are gonna be effectively put to use. We will see that. Interested to know what happens in Spain. But is there anything else that we need to think about, like internally as a country? How can we be the top talent hub besides like bringing people in from outside?
Well, there's three ways how you can get the talent. First, you get it from your education system. Second, you re-educate, and the third, you bring them in. We need to focus on all of the three. And the quickest, obviously, is to have a fast and super easy onboarding of foreign talents to the country. And that starts from how do we serve them? Is it easy to find the schools? Is it easy to find doctors and all of it? And are we as a country and are we as a nation and society welcoming?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point that you brought out. Maybe others have comments on that. Do you see the general attitude towards foreign people working in Estonia as improving or not? Because it's been kind of a shaky issue.
Maybe some of the trends, I imagine, like, you know, recruiting in startups will stay challenging. In Karma Ventures, we try to recruit associates and now marketing manager. And the process has been 1 year impossible to find. Like, it's way tougher, I must say. Now when capital is less available, we are looking for marketing manager, but maybe we have different angle to it. So on a C level, there is something interesting happening. Number of good growth companies C level is suddenly available as candidates because the runway is ending, the valuations are dropping, no visibility for new rounds, acceptance for salary cuts even 30%. And also from large corporates who are waiting potential for layoffs are already looking for new opportunities. There is a lot of activity and a lot of good candidates, actually. Are you ready to move to Estonia? Anytime. So it is something to pay attention that you can already look from a bit higher quality than you usually looked for, maybe, and from places where you usually didn't look for. Because there is also, for example, Babylon Health, UK-based startup listed now. At peak, 3 billion. At the moment, 200 million valuation. From 3 to 200. Burn rate, 150 million. When the employee lockup ended, the stock plummeted. And we already hear also more like regionally or pretty close, that secondaries from very well-known unicorns are suddenly available with quite significant discounts. It indicates how people who are close by are seeing the future. And in this future, they are looking for new opportunities where companies are promising they are right for the next 5 years to come as a value proposition, and they are reasonably well funded. There is a new way how potentially we could look for talent and from where.
Thank you. Before we get to the most maybe interesting part of predicting the future and seeing how we go, welcoming the next 5 years, maybe a little bit about also the community and the ecosystem in general. Are we a quality ecosystem? Do we have the services that the startups that are born and that are scaling need during their lifetime? Do you see, are we still the cozy, the welcoming, the best ecosystem that the world can have? Maybe Lauri, you can you've been quiet.
I would say the short reply or answer to this question is yes. I see that a lot of things are happening. The people get all the support they need. Obviously, I mostly see at the stage where the companies that we take a deeper look at, they are still small. They're usually in their they have single-digit employees, so or in their teens maybe the number of employees they have. So for that matter, I would say that as I also reply for a previous question, the talent is always scarce, but at this stage it does not yet be that important, right? But at this stage where we invest in the kind of the personality and for the founders and the support they can get from the community is really important. And for that matter, we have all those players in our ecosystem that help with them with first to create the entrepreneurial mindset, then to help them to make connections to the relevant players. There are many like early stage funds here. So I would say that things are pretty good. So we can always bring out something that could be better, but in general, things are good.
So we can say that our community still fertilizes the future companies quite well, and we don't have to send founders away to Israel or Berlin or anywhere. So
absolutely, and for that matter, I see the layoffs that you brought out previously as an opportunity, because I assume and I hope and I believe that many of those people will become, or at least some of those people will become new founders. So, yeah, there's always an opportunity in each problem.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the tunneled part of the discussion. And coming up to the vision that also the Founders Society had on their webpage, and we kind of discussed during the past 2 years that in 2030, tech sector will make 30% of Estonian GDP. And we would, of course, like to be the country to host headquarters and host the unicorns, etc., etc. So, how are we on the way there? Are we going to make it, and how? Even if it sounds crazy, like, is there enough, let's say, fertilizing material to bring us there? So, what are the main kind of challenges or key factors to growth? Maybe, who would like to start commenting?
We achieve this 30% not only like how fast startup sector grows, but also how quickly non-competitive, traditional, inefficient industries are collapsing. So at one point of time, you don't need to grow that much to achieve 30%.
So I would say that, the economy works as a whole. So even if we don't have yet the tech sector make up 30% of the GDP, what you have to take into account is that the people who work in the tech industry, they usually have much higher salaries. They consume the services and products of the sectors that do not get into this tech sector's GDP. So they actually contribute much more than you would just say by the numbers of how much GDP is made by these companies.
You work a lot with digitalization, and do you see that the tech sector is going to be so, one with everything else, that it's going to be just one sector, one tech sector, everything? So
yeah, it's a pretty ambiguous word as such. The way I like to see that is that each startup disrupts somebody's process, somebody's business process, whatever they're doing. Each successful startup changes the way somebody does something. So for that matter, again, we get to the point where each startup actually has a value also outside of the startup scene. So yes. Thank you,
Joonas.
Maybe to answer the last question and this one as well, 30% of the GDP for the tech sector is definitely ambitious, but I think Estonians like ambition, so it's definitely doable, and to also agree with the former speakers that the tech sector. As we say it out loud, seems like a narrow thing, but actually it goes like sector over the sectors. So if we speak about hydrogen or industry, actually the tech scene and then the innovation through startups go to those sectors as well. So that raises those sectors and shows the growth as well. But maybe to come back to the last question just once more, that is the tech sector like in a good place in Estonia or the startup scene? Then maybe we need to hear like others from other countries or other startups as well, because Estonia and then the startup scene in a global scale really shines. And then if we speak with the funds or other startups from other countries, then everybody knows Estonia. And then that we win per capita in every category, this really stick to the minds of the other people as well. Mm-hmm. So I think we shouldn't like hold back or be humble about it, but we need to like understand ourselves that actually Estonia and the tech scene and then the startup scene is really, really strong.
Thank you. Just put on this slide real quick, talking about the possible new verticals or possible new industries that can be born out of, let's say, difficult times. This is just a map of CEE countries showing that we're really strong, and also we can see this from the Estonian list of raised funding, that a lot of fintech is happening, and crypto. Do we see this continuing, or is it just starting, or maybe is there something else that is, putting its head out of the grass now? Do you see any opportunities for, let's say, I have 3 ideas. Which one should I go with?
Just my quick reaction here would be that during the times of liquidity crunch that is obviously happening now, the kind of relative importance of fintech, I expect this to decline compared to the other areas.
I think when, again, coming back to your question about Estonian Founders Society vision having quite extensive amount of GDP by the sector, and I very much like actually what Margus said at the beginning, is how do we measure it? Do we measure the quantity or do we measure the quality? And if you think about the sectors, where do we get, out of which sectors do we get the most out of deployed capital? And this is where really when we go into the deep tech, and I mean not the slogan deep tech, but deep tech that has IP in Estonia. Or where do we go deeply so that it's not just a I don't know, an app or some very simple application one, but we go deep, and maybe in 10 years time we're going to have 20,000 employees, but we still have an extensive number of GDP, because what we do has much higher value, not only one level, not only the revenue generated level and not only the valuation level. So we need to start thinking as a startup nation more smartly and more deeply, and really have the patient capital also investing into the science technology, and making sure we as country also holds IPs. So not only the number of startups and the funds raised, but how much and how effectively we can return the capital.
Yeah, definitely. You had a...
Yes, so actually I have good news for you, because previously I mentioned that we made 5 syndicate investments this year through EstBAN-led syndicate investments. Each one of those 5 can be counted as a deep tech startup. And not the way Margus explained previously that deep tech because deep tech funding was available. I mean, all of those startups got invested by just private investors, so they were actual deep tech startups. So the future looks bright.
I hope so. I'm really rooting for this to happen. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to just give one example of a story of one startup. We can talk about that later as well. But we had a meeting today, and their problem was that the amount of money they need is quite low, because they will have the investment from the Enterprise Estonia as well, but all they need is the omaosalus.
Their own investment.
Own financing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. And they have met with a couple of like the early round investors from Estonia as well, and then everything say, wow, like what a product! If we look of the trend of the drones and then the growth of the sector there, then like it like really goes perfectly into that sector. I love the idea and so on, but actually it's not my sector. So that's the maybe laziness of the VC money as well a little bit, and then maybe just to see the bigger picture a little bit, and then like the founder himself like joked that yes, we don't have an app, but we have something better.
Thank you for that. Maybe last comment before we get to the prediction.
Even in most difficult times, beautiful innovation happens. Is it Web3? Is it crypto? Who knows? Yesterday I thought I know how to do DD on crypto. Today I don't know again. So, but some, hope there is. But if it should get like really problematic, there might be some items to keep in mind. It is good if you know the customer behavior. And really unsexy B2G, business to government sales, might come into play. Like Estonian company EstVCA doing cybersecurity trainings for governments, for public sector, globally large corporates. You can assume that cyber training is something essential in even most difficult times. Infrastructure and everything around construction, softwares, efficiencies. If the product helps to bring return on investment very fast, you might be in a very good place. And then there are always, climate tech, as I mentioned before as well. A lot of money goes into it. The pipeline is not that visible yet, but hopefully it will generate something. So the potential customer behavior is something where to look. Is it predictable already, or is it completely unknown or not proven yet for complicated times?
Thank you. So maybe everybody could kind of as a final words say how you in your organization or your company are preparing for the next 5 years. We know that it can be difficult, but we have established that it's fertilizing. So how do you prepare, if at all? And is there maybe any piece of advice to anybody listening who's an ecosystem builder or trying to raise their next round or even trying to raise their fund? Like, what would you give to them?
From the founder's point of view, it's actually very easy. There's two things. First, efficiency. How to scale the companies without raising the cost side. And the second, revenue. These are the keywords for the next at least 2 to 3 years. And there's every single company we've been talking to in our society. It's about growing, it's about the revenue. And this year has been less predicting or preparing for the future, maybe this. And next year it's execution. But revenue is the key, I think. Execution and revenue.
What about Joonas? How are you preparing, or what's your advice?
Preparing with a new strategy for Invest Estonia, which will be available for everyone to see in the beginning of the new year as well. The goal is to choose the right sectors for our organization where we can help in a most productive way. Where's the market failure or market block or something like that, and then to prioritize which of those sectors, which of those trends we can be the most help. And of course, to all of the Estonian startups, find us as well, because the most useful thing for the Estonian startups we have had and we have done is building a network of foreign VC funds and investors, and then the most productive way to bring VC money and those investments to Estonia is to find the matches for Estonian startups.
Okay, thank you. What about EstBAN and Lauri?
Yes, so shortly for an business angel who is too afraid right now, I would say that, since it takes like 5 to 10 years from the time when you invest to the liquidity event, then this will happen when the market cycle is already back up, so just do it.
Everybody, invest now. Margus, what about you? Are you going to be more optimistic this time than last, or even more negative?
Actually, at Karma Ventures, we plan to keep doing exactly the same what we have done so far. No changes at all. Roughly out of 1,000 opportunities, 4 to 5 investments per year. If everything goes well, then from this fund until 2026. I think it will be, when money is easily available, there are also quite a lot of spaghetti entrepreneurs. You throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. We like more mission-driven, truly mission-driven founders, because we have seen that the true mission gives a lot of energy when times are difficult. And survival rate among mission-driven entrepreneurs seems to be significantly higher. And when capital is less available, there will be relatively more mission-driven founders. So I think it will be a beautiful time.
Thank you.
Maybe just one more thing to add is that I forgot it for now, but it will come back in a second.
2 seconds.
2 seconds. Is that no, I forgot it.
Maybe meanwhile, while you're thinking, just remember that to end on a positive note, in the same atomic report that we saw some slides from, there was a questionnaire, interviews from people all over Europe. Like, do you see the future as better or worse? So 59% of the interviewees in Estonia thought it's going to be much better. Last year it was 39%. So maybe that's a positive note also.
Show me a founder who doesn't believe in the future.
In the tech sector, definitely in the tech sector. And it's gone up 13% in a year. So I don't know, maybe it's the Estonian thing that we like hardship and we get energy and we get our drive from difficult times. So I'm happy to be Estonian. So I promised that we will have a few minutes for questions. Does anybody have anything? You have this chance right here, creme de la creme.
Margus, any number? 1, 2, 1.5?
So to the
In
people
which category? I can say immediately. Like how much will be fundraised next year? Well, Bolt said they don't need money anymore, which is the best ad for investors. Of course you want to deploy when money is not needed. I think it will be less than 1 billion.
Less than 1 billion. Any other offers, or shall we close with that?
Although I'm a bit cautious now because Margus said it's going to be a beautiful year, vision-driven year. So what do you think about it?
We are glad that it doesn't see a not beautiful year coming. So I just also remembered I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Eve, head of Startup Estonia. This should have been at the beginning, but it has been a pleasure having you here. Thank you again to all the panelists. Of course, you are welcome to stay here, enjoy some food, drinks, and beautiful conversations, because we have a beautiful year coming as well. So why not kick it off right here? Thank you. Have a nice evening.